The man who vowed change for America sets his sights even further, this time a world free from nuclear weapons. Barack Obama's vision calls for greater international cooperation, more authority for nuclear inspectors. He's keeping his own escape route open too. An achievable objective or just a lofty dream? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Kamal Santamaria. A world free from nuclear weapons. It is audacious, it is hopeful, but then it's been proposed by the author of a best-selling book called The Audacity of Hope. Still, is Barack Obama realistic when he speaks of a planet that would never again live under the shadow of the mushroom cloud? Especially when his own country has a pretty high number of nuclear weapons itself and seems to have a big say in deciding who should and shouldn't have access to nuclear technology. Well, regardless, the US president took his nuclear-free vision to the people of the Czech Republic on Sunday in an address to tens of thousands of people in the capital, Prague. It ended up being just hours after North Korea launched a rocket, which many suspected of being a test for a long-range, potentially nuclear missile. So the timing is obviously crucial right now. This nuclear-free plan is definitely long-term. Obama said his goals may not be realized in his lifetime, but he would strive to achieve them. He laid out a plan to stop the spread of nuclear weapons and ban nuclear testing.
First, the United States will take concrete steps towards a world without nuclear weapons. To put an end to Cold War thinking, we will reduce the role of nuclear weapons in our national security strategy and urge others to do the same. Make no mistake, as long as these weapons exist, the United States will maintain a safe, secure, and effective arsenal to deter any adversary and guarantee that defense to our allies, including the Czech Republic. But we will begin the work of reducing our arsenal. To reduce our warheads and stockpiles, we will negotiate a new strategic arms reduction treaty with the Russians this year.
But we come back to the central issue that nuclear weapons do exist, and they exist mostly because of conflicts and perceived threats between countries. So, is it about removing the weapons or removing the conflicts which give rise to the weapons? Let's discuss this and plenty more with our guests. In Washington, D.C. is Richard Weitz. He's the director of the Center for Political Military Analysis at the Hudson Institute. In Moscow is Pavel Felgenhauer. He's an independent defense analyst. And rounding out our panel in London, Kate Hudson, the chair of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside Story. Richard Weitz, I'll come to you first in Washington, D.C. and go back to that question which I just posed. Is it any use removing the weapons when the threats, or the perceived threats as it may be, are there and are probably going to be there for a very long time?
Well, you've asked basically the fundamental question people have been gripping with since the advent of the nuclear age. Is the world better off without nuclear weapons or with them? On the surface, everybody thinks initially it makes sense to have a world without nuclear weapons because of their devastating power. But some people worry that if you remove nuclear weapons, you'll go back to conventional wars. And we saw in World War I, World War II, how devastating those can be. So we just don't know. We haven't had a major conventional war in the world since the advent of nuclear weapons. Some people say it's because of that. Some people say it would have occurred otherwise. You know, we've evolved further in our thinking. We've become less inclined to use force. It's just an impossible experiment to run because you can't hold everything constant and have two different worlds, one with nuclear weapons, one without, and see which one is more violent prone.
Kate Hudson in London, as someone from the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, I'm sure you're pleased with what you've heard from Barack Obama. Do you believe, though, he is perhaps being a little bit too ambitious with what he's saying just now?
No, I think that he comes over as eminently practical. He set out a goal, he set out a vision which he himself admits may be long-term, but he's also putting forward some very, very concrete steps that will deliver on the way there. The new START treaty, for example, big bilateral reductions between the United States and Russia, that's good in itself, but of course it's also an indication to other countries who may be thinking of proliferating that the tide is turning in the opposite direction to nuclear weapons. He's also going to seek ratification of the Comprehensive test ban treaty. That's a good step. Perhaps a fissile material cut-off treaty, maybe even going on to things like de-alerting of nuclear weapons. But of course, dealing with loose nukes and increasing the inspection powers, making sure that inspection regime, verification of any disarmament is absolutely rigorous. So I think he's got a clear vision, but he's not utopian, he's very practical.
So optimism there from Kate Hudson. Pavel Felgenhauer in Moscow. We heard there, Ms. Hudson referenced the US-Russia relation. I'd like to get your view on that. I mean, it was all smiles and handshakes, Medvedev and Obama. Do you think there is room for success in arms reduction between these two countries where there perhaps wasn't with the previous two leaders?
Well, basically, yes, there is the possibility for some cuts in offensive strategic nuclear weapons. The United States is ready to do that. Basically, Russia is also ready, since anyway we're losing these capabilities to some extent. We are right now, Russia is struggling to contain their legacy of Soviet delivery systems, and so we can kind of cut to the level which would reduce anyway without any treaty. But these cuts will be rather marginal. Russia has basically already agreed in 2002 to cut to 1,700. Now they're talking of cutting from that to 1,500. Well, that's a cut, of course. That's not much weapons compared to what there was in the time of the height of the Cold War, but this is a rather marginal cut.
Right, so that's Russia we've talked about there. Let's look at some other specific countries that President Obama dealt with in his speech in Prague. This is what he had to say on North Korea.
I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons. North Korea broke the rules once again by testing a rocket that could be used for long-range missiles. This provocation underscores the need for action, not just this afternoon at the UN Security Council, but in our determination to prevent the spread of these weapons. Rules must be binding. Violations must be punished. Words must mean something. The world must stand together to prevent the spread of these weapons. Now's the time for a strong international response.
Richard Weitz, President Obama there talks about a provocation and other such language and about breaking the rules. Rules must not be broken, words must mean something. It sounds, in a way, almost, perhaps this is too strong a word, but dictatorial. It's saying, we make the rules here, you have to abide by them. What if that rocket was just a satellite and there was nothing nuclear to do with it?
Well, the rule he is referring to was not a U.S. rule. It was a UN Security Council resolution 1718, which was adopted unanimously by the Security Council, which Russia, Britain, and other countries signed, which said that it instructed North Korea not to develop its ballistic missile potential further. Now, the problem is that even if it were a satellite launch attempt, even if it had no direct military application, the technology for launching a space launch vehicle, a rocket, is very similar to that to a ballistic missile. There are some differences, but you can very easily transfer whatever you learn from one realm to the other, which is why the Security Council resolution was interpreted as prohibiting this launch.
But
so
I'm just wondering,
the rule he was concerned about.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just wondering, what if there was a UN Security Council resolution or something like that which went against Britain or the United States or something like that? I mean, you can imagine the outcry there would be that terms were being dictated to the United States over what it could and couldn't do.
Right. Now, the Security Council has a fuse, almost, a safety box for that. It gives Britain, the United States, China, Russia, and France, the major powers, a veto. So it's understood if the Security Council tried to do something like that, it would potentially put the UN at risk, since that country could withdraw or defy it. So that will not happen. That said, your larger point, now North Korea is uniquely restricted under this resolution, and it's because of the fact that it detonated a nuclear device and it's taken other actions which are considered to be in violation of international law. In general, though, if you look at the world reaction, nobody wanted North Korea to test this missile or rocket, maybe it may. aside from North Korea, all the neighboring countries, all the countries we talked about, all did not want them to do it. So I think there's a general world consensus it would be better off if North Korea were not launching rockets or missiles.
Kate Hudson, do you think that the SixParty Talks, which of course are to do with North Korea and disarming North Korea, do you think they have a future, and do you think what President Obama said could be put to good use with North Korea, i.e. if everyone disarms, well, we're not just asking you to do it?
Well, yes, I do think that. I think, in fact, that the North Korean launch has really underscored the importance of what President Obama is saying and what his intentions are, because it's precisely further events of this sort or other countries going down this route that one wants to prevent. I think with the actual North Korean situation, I think that you have to see it really in the wider context. What is North Korea trying to achieve? We know some of that through their concerns that have come out in the SixParty Talks. They're concerned about their security because they were on the US Axis of Evil and hit list thing a few years ago under President Bush. They withdrew from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty because they said they had a deterrent need to develop nuclear weapons. They may genuinely feel under those types of threats. And of course they have great concerns about energy supplies. And I think that the SixParty Talks have been specifically designed to address those issues and to persuade North Korea to pull out of its, or to abandon its nuclear weapons programs or nuclear technology programs in exchange, and there has been some very, very good developments on that. I was very pleased to hear President Obama saying a couple of days ago that the North Korean test wouldn't derail that process, and I think that's absolutely right. North Korea has to be made less isolated. It has to be brought into dialogue much more, and of course the better relations that the United States has with countries like Russia and China, which may well be able to exert influence on North Korea in a sensible direction, the better. So dialogue, I believe, is the answer, and addressing what legitimate concerns North Korea does have.
Now, you mentioned the infamous axis of evil there, so we shouldn't leave Iran out. This is what President Obama had to say about Iran.
So let me be clear. Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile activity poses a real threat, not just to the United States, but to Iran's neighbors and our allies. The Czech Republic and Poland have been courageous in agreeing to host a defense against these missiles. As long as the threat from Iran persists, we will go forward with a missile defense system that is cost-effective and proven.
Pavel Felgenhauer, it becomes a bit of a vicious circle, doesn't it? You've got the US seeing a threat from Iran, so it installs or wants to install a missile shield. So Iran then feels threatened, and then you have Russia feeling threatened as well. I mean, as long as people are still talking about weapons and whether it be defending or attacking, it's just going to go on, isn't it?
Oh, yes. As President Obama said, it's not in his lifetime. That means in the coming, most likely, 40 years, there won't be denuclearization of the world. Nuclear weapons will continue. For the Russian military, nuclear disarmament, full disarmament, is anathema because right now, with the inherent weakness of our conventional forces, the nuclear capability we have is the only thing that kind of keeps us in the league of military superpowers. And of course, for the United States, which has the best conventional forces in the world and invests a lot in new conventional weapons, nuclear weapons may be a thing of the past, but they are not a thing of the past for other countries. And as Obama said, as long as other countries have nuclear weapons, the United States will also have a credible nuclear deterrent, which means that, of course, nuclear disarmament is way, way away right now.
Stick around, folks. We're going to take a quick break on Inside Story. When we come back, we'll discuss the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, something which is supposed to limit the spread of weapons. Could it help or could it hinder Barack Obama's vision? We're back soon.